Hey guys, for my June 15th DVD update, I talk about all the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Now, I've got some lot of stuff in this one, some really cool stuff, and like I always say, definitely give the video a thumbs up if you're enjoying the DVD updates, and leave me a comment below on what you think of the titles I've reviewed, or what was your opinions of the movies and things like that. Now, the first one from Warner Brothers is Jack the Giant Slayer, which is a modern day, like Jack and the Beanstalk story. You know, as a kid, I used to always watch, like, the fairy tale theaters and all those kind of things, and Jack and the Beanstalk was always one of my favorites. They also had I think Jack Kirby, or those full moon things. They had one of them too I used to always watch, and you know, it always kind of involved like the golden egg or something like that. This one doesn't have that aspect of it. It's about the basic story of the original, though, about a kid lives with his uncle. They're very poor. He goes to the city to try, the town, to try and sell off his horse. When he's there, he ends up kind of helping this girl out, and it turns out to be the princess. That's an important point, but the main thing, though, is when he gets to the city, there's a monk there that ends up stealing these magic beans from the castle that were hidden away. Stanley Tucci's character, has them hidden away and has plans for these things. And, the monk ends up getting away with them, and, he comes out, the monk needs to get away out of the castle, sees Jack with the horse and says, "I don't have any money, but I'll give you these beans that are magic for the horse. But you have to take these beans and bring them to the fellow monks," and things like that. In this one, I guess they added that to it, like, in the original, I think he was just giving him the beans. This, the original story, this one was the monk, giving the beans. Basically, what ends up happening, though, is he ends up taking the beans back to his house. His uncle's, like, mad at him, going, "Why would you do that? This is the only thing we have to get any money with." Just like the classic thing, one of the beans ends up falling outside, or it actually falls through a crack in the house. And then later, the princess, who is trying to be forced into marrying the Stanley Tucci character, ends up, hiding out at Jack's house because she was happy that he helped her, and that's basically what ends up happening. It's raining. The Beanstalk ends up growing from the basement, brings the house up with the princess. Jack ends up falling below, and it's a whole thing about them trying to get back. The king comes and was like, "What happened?" And it's kind of the expedition to climb the Beanstalk and get the princess back. And Jack ends up coming along, and Stanley Tucci's character, and Ewan McGregor, and it's like kind of the mission to rescue her. And when they get up there, there's giants. And, I thought this was, I really liked this one. Like, it reminded me of, like I said, as a kid, these classic, like, fantasy, never-ending story kind of vibes. Like, there hasn't been a movie like this in that I can think of in a pretty long time that was this kind of, and it had like a mix of kind of seriousness, mixed with, kind of over-the-top humor, which I kind of like, with the giants kind of had that kind of humor, and they kept with that kind of humor of the giants. And, it was basically about, getting her back, and then, Stanley Tucci has these big plans there, and I don't want to say everything about it, but I really would recommend checking this out. I thought this was a really fun movie, and it has a thing on here, a behind-the-scenes thing with the director about, like, giants and things like that, and deleted scenes in a gag reel. But I don't know, I just thought this was a really fun one. Ended up liking this one a lot more than I thought, because I heard some mixed things about it, but I thought this was a really fun one. The next one from Warner Brothers is the incredible Burt Wonderstone, and this is a movie about these two magicians, and they've been doing magic together for years, and it's kind of like they're always doing the same act. It's Steve Buscemi and Steve Carell, and in the beginning they're all about it, and it's really like, Steve Carell is so into it, and it cuts to years later, and they're in Vegas still, doing the same thing. They don't get along at all with each other. They are always arguing, and at the same time, there's a new magician out there, played by Jim Carrey, who's kind of like, he doesn't really even do magic as much as he does, like, shock 'em kind of things. And he's almost like a Chris Angel, mixed with a David Blaine, mixed with, like, somebody that does, like, freak show acts with, like, stapling things and, like, all that kind of crazy over-the-top stuff, like nailing, a nail in with his head and things like that. And it ends up being, Steve Carell and Buscemi's character end up having a falling out. And the movie's basically about Steve Carell trying to get himself figured out and trying to figure out what he's going to do and how to reinvent the act. And that's what kind of makes them fall apart in the first place, is them trying to do an act very much like Jim Carrey's, more of a stunt of locking himself into this thing, into a glass box, and ends up being hot, and they try and go in there for all these days, and Jim Carrey's doing all these crazy stunts like trying to not pee for a week and as long as he can, and I don't know, I enjoyed this thing. I always love magic kind of movies. It's a very fun magic movie. I really love too. I'm not giving anything away, but I thought the end was really funny when they reveal how they did one of the tricks in the movie. That was one of my favorite things in the movie. It was just absolutely ridiculous the way they did it. And you can almost imagine, like, maybe a real magic show could do something like that and you never would know it. But basically, like I said, it's that kind of a thing about Steve Carell trying to get his act together, and he ends up, meeting Alan Arkin's character, who's a magician that he grew up with and was who inspired him to do magic. And it's them trying to come up with a new act and getting himself together, along with Olivia Wilde, who is helping him along the way. It's one of those kind of things, but I thought it was a fun movie. I would definitely recommend watching this, and it has a bunch of features on this. It has uncut stuff of Jim Carrey's tricks on here, deleted scenes and gag reels, and a thing in here with David Copperfield. But this is a fun one. If you like magic movies and if you love Jim Carrey definitely steals the show on this. I thought he was great in this one. The next one from Disney is Oz the Great and Powerful, and this is the prequel to Oz. Now, I know since it was done by Disney, they can't reference, like, the Wizard of Oz, like, certain aspects. That didn't bother me, though. I really enjoyed this one. I thought that there was one character, and a couple people agreed, a lot of people that I was reading, kind of agreed that she seemed a little bit miscast as what she did. I don't want to get into too much about it. It was, I can say who it was. It was Mila Kunis' character. I don't want to say who she, what she did that I thought was a little bit miscast, because it just sort of seemed like there was a little bit of a struggle with her doing what she did in that character. But it's basically about James Franco, who's this magician at a carnival, and he does like illusion tricks and things like that. And this is back in the time too, before people knew about a lot of the stuff being fake and kind of believed it was real. And he's talking to this one girl who's in a wheelchair, and the family kind of believes that he can make her walk again, and he can't do it because it's all fake and it's all just an illusion. He ends up escaping in a hot air balloon and ends up in the land of Oz. So it's like, in the original Oz, it was the, kind of, with the tornado and all that, end up into Oz. This one, it's the hot air balloon. And I love how they start this movie off in black and white, in full screen. It kind of reminds me of, like, classic carnival, like, movies like Freaks and that kind of one. It was shot just like that and really had that 1930s vibe to it, which I thought was really successful. And then when they actually get to Oz, it really, with all the, and it was a lot of CGI and stuff, but the backgrounds and stuff really work in this movie. I thought it was one of those movies where it all really fits and makes sense for this. But when he gets there, he ends up being believed to be the great and powerful Oz character who can save Oz and fix all their problems and things like that. Ends up meeting these witches, and he ends up going to the castle, and there's this treasure, but he can only get the treasure if he kills the Wicked Witch. So it's him on this journey to try and kill the Wicked Witch, along with this flying monkey and this glass doll. And I just thought this was a really fun one. It definitely has the fit. It does really work as a prequel to me. I'm interested in seeing, too, what they do if they do another one, as I'm guessing the sequel will be The Wizard of Oz. So I'm interested in seeing how they do that and things like that. But this I would definitely recommend watching. I thought this was a really good, fun movie. I just really like it. I've always been a fan of James Franco. I know some people said, they didn't absolutely love him in this because he was doing a certain smile or something. I don't know, people kept mentioning that in the reviews, like his smile or something. It didn't bother me. I liked him in this. And it's got a bunch of stuff on here with Danny Elfman and bloopers and things with James Franco, behind the scenes and things like that. But definitely check this one out. And the next one I got from Disney is The Emperor's New Groove and Kronk's New Groove Double Pack Blu-ray. This is one that I had never seen before, but a lot of people have mentioned it to me. It's about this emperor who ends up firing his advisor, and this is an emperor who's real full of himself, and played by David Spade, and voiced by David Spade. And John Goodman is a peasant that comes into the town to meet the emperor, and the emperor is planning on turning where he lives into a water park. So John Goodman's character leaves furious about it, but he the emperor ends up firing his advisor, and the advisor ends up planning to kill him, and plans to poison him. But the person that works with the advisor, that was with him, Kronk, ends up mixing up the potions and accidentally turning the emperor into a llama. And the llama ends up being, because of what happened, he tries to hide what happened, and the llama ends up being right near the house of the peasant that he's planning on turning his house into a water park, private just for himself. And it's him, the peasant, trying to help him get back, but he's like, well, I'm not going to help you if you're going to destroy my village. So it's like kind of a thing about, characters like changing along the way, one of those kind of things. I don't know, I thought this was a really fun one. And I don't know, it's like, I don't know, it's just one of those ones that I kind of surprised that I never saw before. I would definitely check this one out. The next one, it's Atlantis. This is about a character voiced by Michael J. Fox, who ends up, believing in the lost city of Atlantis, and, he's a scientist, but everybody around him doesn't believe him. They think he's crazy, and he ends up just getting this book that has, like, the way to get there. He's talking to his father about it, and it turns out his father has the belief of, Atlantis as well. So it's with them taking this boat, this, like, a submarine thing that the father has, and trying to go to Atlantis and, like, the adventure of getting there. It also includes the sequel, Milo's Return. All these Disney animated ones look really, really good on Blu-ray. They always do such an amazing job, with the picture on these. And I think that the features on these are on the DVDs only, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure. I can't remember for sure on that, though. And the last one I got, Lilo and Stitch. This alien that ends up, this is the Blu-ray double pack as well with the Blu-ray and the DVD, that ends up, this alien ends up escaping and comes to Hawaii and, try and hide away. People are after him, and he ends up getting taken in as confused as a dog, and ends up getting adopted by this girl and her sister. And it's kind of like all the kind of hijinks and things that happen. And it's one of those really positive stories. And it's also got some stuff sad too about her family and what happened to her parents and things like that. And someone that, doesn't believe the sister can take care of her. I don't know, this was always one that I really liked. And it also has Lilo and Stitch 2 as well. But this is one, out of all of them, my favorite ones of the new Disney ones that just came out was this one and Emperor's New Groove. Now from Scream Factory, Shout Factory Scream line, this is one that I have not seen this movie in a really long time, and forgot how cool, and I kind of thought it was a little different than it was, but it was better than I thought. And it's the Howling new Blu-ray edition, collector's edition from Scream Factory, and this stars Dee Wallace, and she ends up being, she's kind of this reporter that is going to meet this guy that's believed to have killed these people. She ends up going to meet him at this adult bookstore, and when he's there, he ends up, things are going all right, but then he ends up getting killed by the police. And, she's all shaken up by the whole thing and extremely freaked out about it. And her doctor ends up suggesting that she goes and takes some time off because, she tries to go back in the air. She can't do it. There's no way for her to function anymore. She's totally broken down from this experience. So a doctor suggests she goes to this place called The Colony, which I'm wondering if that's where they got the name for the John Ritter movie, The Colony, which was kind of a weird one, which I never has come to DVD or anything. But it was a TV one. But she ends up going with her husband to this, colony place, which is kind of like a couple's place where people go, and they're kind of like almost hippie-ish and sort of screwing around out there and just trying to forget about things and be out in the wilderness and, into the woods and things like that. But when she's out there, she starts seeing weird things and hearing the sounds of these wolves, and it's all kind of one of those movies where there's a lot more going on, to it, and it's because it's a werewolf film. But I think, to me, it's probably one of the best werewolf films, up there with American Werewolf. And I really like the transformation stuff in this. It's different than American Werewolf, but I thought it was very effective. And also, it's one of the movies too that has a really, really effective, strong ending. But it's got a whole bunch of features on here: commentary with Joe Dante and D. Wallace Stone, making of, deleted scenes and outtakes. It has a cool thing too that Sean Clark did when he goes and tours the locations or where this was filmed now and shows them. Always love that kind of stuff, to see what the places look like now, And I know he's going to, from what I heard, he's going to be doing some for some of the upcoming ones too. They're very cool. Like, I know he does them too in the Horror Hound magazine, like the pictures. This is the video version of it. The next one, too, from the Scream Factory is Life Force. This is one I had seen like once or twice before. And, this is not like an absolute perfect movie. The coolest stuff about this movie is the special effects. Like, there's some amazing sequences with people kind of like drying up and like their skin kind of drying up, and like that's some of the coolest stuff in it. It's about these people in space that end up discovering these 3 bodies in space. They end up taking aboard their ship, and they discover them on this weird kind of ship type thing that's huge out in space. Take them back, and it cuts to a number of months later. They end up finding the ship, and and they're all missing. You know what I mean? There's no one left on there except the one woman that they find, and they bring her back, and she's basically a person that sucks the life out of people to continue to live. That's why one of the original titles of this was Space Vampires or something like that. And Steve Railsback, though, who's one of the astronauts in the beginning, he ends up coming back, and it's not spoiling anything, though, because in the trailer and everything. Also, they're trying to find the woman because she gets away and sucks the life out of people. Like I said, that's the coolest stuff, is the sucking the life out of people, those effects. Patrick Stewart is in this and has his stuff is a really great scene in this. But I don't know, this is one that, like I said, is not an absolutely perfect movie. It's a fun one. It also includes the director's cut version, which is a little long, the longer one, but it is a little long. But it has, commentaries on here, making of featurette, the trailers. Like I said, Scream Factory always does such an amazing job with putting features on these movies. And movies, too, where if other companies would have put these out, they would have been bare bones, no features on them. And I can't wait, though, to have, like, some of the upcoming ones, Night of the Comet and Body Bags. But Night of the Comet is one I really can't wait to see on Blu-ray. And the next one from Scream Factory, and this is one of the first titles from them, I believe, because I know they're starting to do this, of newer films. And it's Dead Souls, which was a Chiller film for the Chiller channel. It's actually directed by Colin Thays, who directed Banshee. I'm not sure if anyone out there has seen that, but that was one of the first ever horror movies that I acted in. And it's also the company Synthetic Cinema produced this, who did Assault the Sasquatch, which I was in as well. That one's on Netflix streaming if you guys want to see that. But this was a really, really cool one. This is definitely my favorite movie that Synthetic has done. And it's done like a slow burn, old school, haunted house kind of film. And, the movie opens with this family, and the father is killing everyone in the family. Like, he kind of nails them all to the crosses. Cuts to years later, and, you see him say, "Oh, I screwed up. There's still one left." And years later, it's his kid living with his mother, who's this kind of really religious woman, and he gets a letter in the mail that says he's inherited this house, which is where it all took place. His mother hears about it and is like, "Oh, you're not going there." And she ends up having something happen, ends up in the hospital. And when she's in the hospital, he ends up going to this place. And, when he gets there, he, awakens something. And there starts to be kind of weird things going on. He starts seeing weird things. There's a girl, though, that's been, kind of staying at the house, just sort of hiding out there. So it's both of them there, kind of dealing with what's going on. Bill Moseley has a cool part in this as well, so I thought his stuff was really cool. But this is, like I said, a classic, slow burn, kind of creepy movie, which I thought was very effective and had some creepy stuff to it. This is one of two of the best of the Chiller movies that I've seen. I want to see the one, too. I don't know when this airs. Beneath is one of the other upcoming Chiller ones. The next one from Magnolia. I just finished watching this one now, and it stars Juno Temple and Michael And Gennaro, I know he was from Red State and a number of movies. Juno Temple's been in a lot of things lately. Always love her stuff. The movie's about... This one was a really cool concept. It's about this... well, it starts off with this couple that are, don't have a lot of money. They're really having money issues. Juno Temple's character can't get a job. Her husband, they're newly married, and, he's having problems with his job, too. One day they're going out to get food with the last money they have, end up getting hit by a car, and they end up being all right, but they're right in front of this old antique store. Juno Temple sees this old lady carrying in this teapot, this brass teapot, and sees it and becomes kind of like she just needs it. She needs to get this thing, so she ends up going in there. When the old woman's away, she ends up stealing it. And it turns out this teapot, basically gives you money if you hurt yourself. So it's like they discover this, and it's about them kind of changing their lives by hurting themselves and beating themselves up for money. And it's a very cool concept, and it's interesting too because they have to go through and kind of change with what they do, and things kind of get worse and worse because the teapot kind of gets like to the point where they've got to do something more to get the money, and it becomes less value. They get $100 for like pinching their arm at first. And I don't know. I just like this one. It was all about that kind of thing, and also about a character that kept coming to them, and telling them to get rid of this thing, and all kinds of other problems that are happening along the way for them. But I just thought this was a unique, new kind of movie, and I really thought it was a very effective and fun one. The next one from Magnolia as well is 2359, and it's this movie about a training camp, like a army training camp or military training camp, and there's a belief there that at 2359, which is 1159, that's when like the ghosts can come out, and one guy there believes that he's seeing these ghosts this time, and it's all kind of about what's going on with these ghosts that are haunting them, and them going on like a mission out into the woods, and one of them seeing things. It's one of those kind of creepy horror films. I don't know, I thought it was a pretty creepy one. There's not a whole ton to say about it, but it's mainly about the ghosts of this woman who's this medium and things like that. There's some creepy visuals and things like that in this. And the next one from Millennium Films, this one I absolutely loved, and it's a very different, weird film, and even when the directors and stuff are talking about it, they're saying this is such a weird movie, and it really is, and that's what I really liked about it, and I cannot think of anything else that I've seen that's like this. And the 3D in this is really pretty cool. It's about it's like a alternate reality where there's two Earths right on top of each other with different gravities. And the gravities, cannot become, with each other because one's going up, one's going down. If the people end up together, if they're there too long, they end up catching fire and like burning up. So it's kind of about these two worlds, and down below, which is where the guy is from, is kind of like the slum, and they kind of get the short end of the stick with everything. It's kind of like the poor people almost, even though they can't help where they are. And the people above are the ones with the money, with the better quality products and things like that. And it's about when they're children, the guy, ends up meeting... He goes to this area that's restricted where he climbs up this mountain where he can, when he's basically close to this, the other tides, I guess it's hard to explain, where he meets Kristen Dunst's character when she's a kid, and they become friends and start talking. And there's these amazing things, in the years, later when he's like pulling her down with a string, and, they kind of have this relationship, but they end up getting caught. And, it's years later, he doesn't know, because he sees her, go up, because he has, when the people are coming, and the cops and things like that, he believes she died. So it's all these years later, and he's kind of hasn't thought about her for all this time, ends up seeing her on the TV, and he becomes obsessed with trying to get to where she is, because the worlds are connected by this kind of factory. And he, goes there to get a job in hopes of trying to find a way to see her. And it's all about him kind of coming up with this way to get there with this invention that he's invented. And it's just a really, really well done love story. One of those movies, too, that you really think about it for a lot afterwards. It will throw some people off, though, Because there's points when they have certain sequences that are upside down, like when you're looking up, they're upside down. When they're looking down, they're down upside down. But then where they are, they're right side up. So it's all this crazy kind of like, I couldn't imagine the logistics of actually trying to figure out how to shoot this movie because it would be so confusing. It's almost like doing, high-level math, trying to make sure you don't screw something up and to figure all of it out. But this is one, if you want something different and you want something that I think is one of the best things I've seen in a really long time, it has that kind of vibe of Cloud Atlas too. Definitely watch this. The next one from Sony is The Last Exorcism 2, which is the follow-up to Last Exorcism. This is the unrated edition. I really loved the first Last Exorcism film. This one is not as good. It's not really bad, though, but it's, I actually thought it was okay. I really love the cover on this and the artwork that they did for this. But it's about the girl in the beginning. Because the original was all done found footage about this guy who was like an exorcist, but he was all fake. And, he was kind of laughing about what he was doing. And he knew that he was conning people out of money and things like that. And it follows up about the girl in the beginning that he's trying to unpossess. It's her... And she ends up, wandering out and getting put into this home for women. And it's like when she's there, the demon is still with her. And there's like this crazy sequence when she wakes up the first time you see her. She's in the bathroom and she's and she stares there. She does a lot of that in the movie. A lot of that. And the bending backwards and all that kind of crazy stuff. But it's her in this women's home with the demons coming around, hearing things. There's all that kind of stuff. The demon is still with her. I thought it was a pretty creepy one. I thought, there was some kind of weird CGI in one part near the end and stuff, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting to see it go from a found footage film to a real film. It's kind of like what they did with the Blair Witch 2, because, Blair Witch was a found footage movie and then went into this real theatrically filmed movie. Because I don't think, though, there was any way that they could have done it found footage style. So for what it was, I think it worked. And the next one I got from Fox is A Good Day to Die Hard, which is the latest of the Die Hard films. And this is the unrated edition Blu-ray. Now, I know they just announced they're going to be doing a part 6, which they say is going to be the last one. Now, to me, though, I thought this was an alright one. But I feel like Bruce Willis, though, the John McClane character... I feel like he's playing it more just like himself now. It's more just like Bruce Willis and the way he is more and other stuff. It doesn't have the same feel as the early films, like as the first 3 films. Even the one before that, it still had that kind of feel. This one doesn't have the same kind of vibe to it. But he's going to Russia to help his son, who's been arrested, and, it ends up being the son is involved in all this stuff, trying to take down this nuclear thing, and there's all this kind of stuff. There's some cool stuff to it, Chernobyl, that I thought was pretty cool in this. But like I said, though, it doesn't have a really strong villain like the other ones did. The villain in this is kind of not seen much. I thought it was, like I said, I thought this was an okay one, but it just doesn't have the same feel with the John McClane character. And there were some cool sequences in it, but then some stuff kind of went on a little long with it. I think it's definitely worth checking out if you like these films, but it's not, like I said, an absolutely amazing one. I am looking forward to seeing what happens in the last one. I am glad, though, at least that they made this one rated R, because the last one was PG-13 and they had to overdub in all the stuff they cut out later. But I think it's worth checking out, but it's just not exactly the same feel of Die Hard. It feels more like another movie that they just put the John McClane character in. The next one is one from Fox as well, and this is one I really thought was a really fun movie, and it's 21 and over. And it's, Did We Just Kill Jeff Chang? And it has, kind of the feel of, a classic, old-school, college movie, like Revenge of the Nerds, and those kind of movies. And it's about these 2 friends that, their friend Jeff Chang is just turning 21, so they're planning to take him out and have a crazy night of drinking and partying and all that kind of stuff. But Jeff Chang's father is to Jeff Chang, you're not going to be leaving. You have studying for your major exam tomorrow. It's like a medical exam or something like that. and, it's something that he needs to pass. And, so his father's, like, forbidding him to do it. But they end up, convincing Jeff Chang to go out. And Jeff Chang gets, like, blackout drunk. And it's them trying to get Jeff Chang back home. And, like, getting lost so they're so drunk they can't find the house. And all these kind of issues because they don't know where he lives anymore. It's all kinds of problems, and they find out things about him they're kind of upsetting, and I don't know, it's just a really fun, crazy, like one of those kind of like I said, old school vibe of those kind of Revenge of the Nerds kind of movies. And like one sequence I really love when they have to go through all this stuff to get something, which I thought was really funny, the guy they find at the top. I don't know, this is one that I really liked. The next one from Fox as well is Killing Lincoln, which is kind of a, it's narrated by Tom Hanks. It's all about the, leading up to Lincoln's death, getting killed by John Wilkes Booth. And, because it's kind of like if you saw the movie Lincoln, that kind of ends right before he goes there. This involves all the things, the plotting with John Wilkes Booth's character and things like that. It was funny watching this. It was kind of remembering back when I was in the 6th grade when I had to, and I don't know why I did this in chorus class, I had to put on like a play, this weird little play of, John Wilkes Booth killing Lincoln. And I remember it became a big disaster, and the one guy who was like the director got so furious about something, he like stormed off and was hiding in the hallways and wouldn't come in, and I remember it was a huge nightmare and didn't go well. But like if you want to see, a thing all about that, I thought it was well done for that kind of thing, and kind of showing the plotting and things like that. And I know there's certain things like when you watch it too that they don't know about all the things behind it, but I thought it was an interesting one. Now this is one that I was really looking forward to watching. It's a remake of Who Could Kill a Child, and it's come out in play. And it's about a couple that, in the original one, I think it was in Spain. This one, it's in Mexico. It's a couple in Mexico. They end up renting a boat, and they want to go to this little island. And they end up renting a boat out there. They get there, it's all these kids everywhere. They can't find any of the adults. And it's them like not sure what's going on. And it turns out, and this is not giving anything away because, if you've seen the original one, you see the trailer, then you know that these bad kids. The kids have basically killed everybody in the town. And, these people, people are trying to get off of this town, trying to leave. The kids are everywhere. So it's kind of a movie about them trying to get off of the island. And I thought it was effective. It is pretty much, though, almost like the Psycho remake, where it's like scene by it really remakes a lot of scenes, like to the point where it was like, oh, it happened just like that in the original one. It was not. It was one of those remakes that really follows the original movie a lot. I know it was based on a book as well, so I don't know if maybe the movie followed the book exactly, the original one. But I thought this was pretty good, though. I mean, if you like a crazy kid movie, kind of has vibes of Children of the Corn, those kind of things, this is definitely one I would check out. The next one is, Hansel and Gretel Get Baked, which stars Laura Flynn Boyle as the Wicked Witch, and it's kind of a stoner movie about, she sells this kind of stream of marijuana, the witch, and it's Gretel and her boyfriend are, get these little samples of it and really like this weed. So the boyfriend goes to try and get more at the witch's house. And she's like, don't eat my, when she's going to get the weed on it, don't eat my gingerbread thing. The boyfriend ends up eating the gingerbread house, and the witch ends up tying the guy up and eating him. And it's like some crazy stuff in it. Like Laura Flynn Boyle is the witch. I thought she did a really good job. It was kind of like almost surprising to see her in a thing like this, because it was like not the kind of thing I think she'd ever done before. She usually had done like kind of real serious movies. But it's about, Gretel trying to find her boyfriend, and Hansel, them going to the house, and all the kind of like investigating the things and trying to figure out what's going on and trying to get to the bottom of it. And meanwhile, the witch is like taking people captive. And it's an interesting parody spoof of, the classic story. I enjoyed it. I thought there was some crazy stuff in it, like stuff involved zombies and things like that. If you like these crazy kind of stoner films, this is definitely one I would watch. The next one from Oscilloscope Laboratories is It's a Disaster. The cover on this is so cool. This is about Julia Stiles and David Cross, are a couple, like a new couple, and like they're third or fourth date, and Julia Stiles always has these kind of couples brunches with her and her friends. This is the first one that she's brought him to, and you know, it's like the couples are all, they kind of get along, but they're kind of like, they don't, you can kind of tell they don't really love each other too much. They're having all kinds of their own problems going on. But it turns out, though, the day that they go to do this is going to be the day that, you know, the day that a dirty bomb is dropped, which is, you know, a toxic bomb. And it's, you know, they hear about it late because, you know, one of the neighbors comes and it's like, oh, didn't you hear what happened? They dropped the dirty bomb 12 miles away. And it's pretty much these people that know that they're going to die. And they're, you know, taping up the windows, trying to live in this house, in there, stuck with each other. These people that, like I said, don't really like each other. And they don't like each other, some of them, because of problems that are going on. It's one of those kind of movies that almost could be done on stage, because it's like, you know, it's a dialogue kind of movie. It's not like tons of stuff happening, but I really liked it. I thought it was really strong, you know, writing, and really pretty funny, and kind of a joke on everything that's going on. It kept making me think of Meet the Applegates, and I don't know why. It has nothing to do with it. I don't know what about it was making me think that. But it was kind of funny, too, Julia Stiles with David Cross, because he's a lot older than her. But I don't know. I thought, though, I like this one. It's just about them, like, living in this house and kind of talking about the end and things like that. The next one from Comedy Central, this is a really fun show. It's the complete third season of Workaholics. I really like this show. It's about three guys that work in this office building, and kind of all the kind of things that happen. And it has vibes, you know, problems that happen while they're there, and the kind of adventures and things that they go on. It kind of reminds me of, you know, Office Space mixed with things like Beavis and Butthead and all that kind of stuff. And I love, too, they get kind of weird cameos and things like this in the show. Like, one of the episodes has Laurie Beth Denberg in it. And I don't, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin what she does. It's just a little thing, but it's funny. Like, in the past season, they got Mark Summers, and it's just kind of funny that it's definitely a show for people around my age that, you know, grew up in the early 90s, and, you know, a kid in the early 90s, and watched, like, early days of Nickelodeon, those kind of things. The show has lots of references to, like, things like that in it, but this is a really fun one. It's got a bunch of stuff on here, bloopers and outtakes, a documentary on the thing. It's just a really fun show. It's one of my favorite of, like, the live action things right now on Comedy Central. The next one from Lionsgate is American Idiots. This is about this guy whose girlfriend ends up leaving him, and he ends up, you know, finding out that she's getting remarried in Vegas in 2 days, and it's him with their friends going, you know, on an RV to try and stop the wedding. The thing I want to say is the character in this movie that stole the show was this uncle wearing this really bad wig, and I don't know, like, the stuff the uncle was saying, it was ridiculous. Like, he was the best character in this whole movie, and, like, it's them going along the way. James Duvall has a funny little cameo in the movie, you know, from Donnie Darko and things like that. He has a little cameo in the movie. It's just one of those kind of fun road trip movies about, you know, trying to stop the wedding and kind of all the situations that they run into along the way. I liked it, though. The next one from Shout Factory, and this one was, you know, really thought was one of the other ones that I would definitely recommend checking out, and it's called Tera Block. And this was about these people, you know, all the kind of apartment buildings around have been kind of demolished, or everyone's left them. They're kind of like selling them off or getting rid of them. And there's one tower there left with, like, the top floor, and that's only people are in on the top. And I think it's the top. Yeah, it's the top. And they end up, you know, in the beginning of the movie, the people in the apartment end up witnessing, or the one person ends up witnessing this person getting killed, and that has a point in the movie. But the people are in there, and one day, you know, they're by the windows, and there's a sniper there killing people and shooting them. So it's all the people in the apartment, the top floor, hiding out in there, you know, into the hallway, and trying to figure out what's going on, how they're going to get out of there. And the place is full of booby traps, and, like, the elevator, everywhere there's all kinds of traps, and, you know, it's them trying to figure out how they're going to get down without getting killed by this guy. I thought it was very effective. It had kind of vibes of things like Cube, even though it wasn't like Cube, you know, it had that kind of feel to it. You know, that claustrophobic kind of stuck feel. I thought it was very well acted, and just a really cool concept, you know, and really worked, and just a really pretty creepy idea too of somebody shooting you from so far away with this. It just was pretty scary. You know, I really like this. The last one from MPI, well, there's two other ones from MPI, is Crawl Space, and this is a movie about. It takes place on this kind of underground bunker thing, kind of like in Night of the Comet, one of those kind of things. And these soldiers are going there to try, because something happened there, and they're going there to kill everybody there and kind of get the situation under control. And when they go there, one of the soldiers ends up seeing this girl, and he doesn't know what's going on because it's his girlfriend or his wife, who he believes has died, and they're all like, "Oh, we have to kill her. Our mission is to kill her," and he won't let that happen. It's kind of all kinds of like these mind control things, and you know, making people be able to do things, and you know, the people who were in this kind of prison facility that they go to, and you know, kind of making people see things and all kinds of stuff like that. I thought it was pretty good. It kind of reminded me of like something. It was like kind of like Resident Evil a little bit, like crawling around and trying to get in there. But it wasn't absolutely amazing. But I thought it was kind of a little different, and I thought there were some cool sequences in it. The last one from Sony is Absolute Deception, and this one was just okay. This is Cuba Gooding Jr. and you know, he's this cop. He was the cop or the FBI, and he ends up finding this. You know, when he's getting these bad guys, he ends up finding this finger on the ground, and it's about him going to the person's wife and saying, "Oh, we found the finger of your husband," and she's like, "Well, what are you talking about? He's been dead for 2 years or a long time." And it's kind of a movie about trying to figure out about this husband who like made his wife believe that he was dead for all this time, and the wife wants to know where he was and what he was doing, and you know, she's trying to get information from Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character. It's just a movie like trying to figure out what's going on and what this guy was into and why he faked his own death and things like that. It's one of those movies, you know, trying to put the pieces together and things like that. Like I said, it was an okay one. It has some interesting things going on, but kind of like paint by numbers, kind of, you know, nothing new. I did like, though, it was directed by Brian Tenchard Smith, who directed Dead End Drive-In, which is one that I really liked. So I was glad to see he was doing something new, but nothing absolutely amazing, though. But anyway, though, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I know this was a pretty long one, but definitely give this one a thumbs up if you like what I'm doing here, and I'll see you guys later.